So as Lily introduced, we've been running these what we call hands-on labs for kids since almost the beginning of the Transition2BIO project. So since beginning of last year. So we had several labs organized in Italy, Germany, Greece, Slovakia, and more recently Austria. So what do we mean by hands-on labs for kids? It's basically experimental workshops where kids usually age between, the average age range was between 5 and 8 years old, or sometimes a little bit older, sometimes a little bit younger, but they have the chance via these workshops to get familiar with the concept of sustainability and how natural ecosystems can offer sustainable solutions to produce goods, energy, or colors, for example. So the kids were usually accompanied by parents or teachers, and we really try to increase their understanding on what a bio-based product is and from what renewable natural resources it can be made. So to sum up, we were trying to explain to them via these interactive and very practical workshops, and with a very simple language, what the bioeconomy is and what bio-based alternatives exist to produce objects, for example. But as you may understand, and with your experience of teacher, the term bioeconomy is already very technical itself, and it's in its definition for kids of 5 to 8 years old. So we were really trying to focus more on things that were speaking to them, so like natural resources, like some ground or some water, some vegetables, and what we can do with this kind of very simple natural products that are surrounding them in their everyday life. So basically, you can just stay on the slide, drawing on the previous Bio Voices project and what they had produced in that project, which was the predecessor project of the Transition2BIO project. So that's created a series of educational materials, and we rely on these to develop 10 possible experiments that kids could also do home with their parents. So normally during a lab, we were just running 1, 2, or maximum 3, I think, from these 10 experiments. But then the accompanying adults could take home the explanatory leaflets, which I will show you on slide in a minute, so that they can basically follow the instructions and do them themselves. And just before coming to the next slides, also worth mentioning that during these experiments, we were also sometimes showing them some innovative bio-based products, and we were trying to make a little quiz with them to make them guess what they were made of. So for example, we had, edible spoon made of flour, some paper made of elephant poo. So this was usually quite grabbing their attention. We had some shoes made of pineapple leaves, like Lily mentioned, coffee cups made of coffee beans. So we were really trying to engage them in some games so that they can have some thinking going on about how can innovation play a role in producing sustainable products. So this was quite interesting for them and for ourselves as well. And so as you can see on the pictures here on the slide, we really try to activate all the senses of the kids by making them touch, feel, or even sometimes smell the feedstock or the bio-based products. And in this way, we really believe that their memory were more easily remembering what their eyes were seeing. And yeah, I think that's it for this slide. We also had, as you can see, an online experiment during the COVID restriction time. So this was in Italy, and we had sort of tested out an online version of the lab by connecting live with the classroom, and our Italian partners would show the experiments to the camera so that the teacher could basically reproduce the experiments with the pupils. So we can go to next slide, please. Yeah, thanks. And basically, these are the leaflets we produce that are basically providing the instructions for running the experiments. So we had 10 experiment leaflets in total, as I said. And these are just 2 examples. On the first ones you show, I will give a bit more details about what kind of experiments we were running with these kids. So the first one is basically about how to make scrubs for the body and face out of coffee ground and oil. So this basically tells the kids that cosmetic products like creams, shower gel, or scrubs can be produced from natural resources without chemical additives. And we can even go a bit further and tell them that the ways that we can have in our home and kitchen, such as the coffee ground, which we would typically throw in a bin after making a cup of coffee, can be reused for other purposes. And then the second one, learn how to make natural color fun, is about using a purple cabbage and mixing it with either vinegar, just water, or with soda. And these three different mixtures can produce three different colors. So basically, this kind of color game was quite working well with kids. We know that kids usually like colors, so it's sort of grabbed their attention quite easily. And here again, the message is about showing that the colors that they see everywhere on their clothes, in their bed sheets, etc., can be made from natural resources as well, and not only chemicals. So basically, the key message that we try to get them is that nature works when it's about making sustainable productions, that bio-based alternatives exist, and also that I think the reusability aspect of some of these, let's say, feedstock products is also quite important for them. Next slide, please. Yep. Okay, so I talked about the experiments, the leaflets we produce, also the bio-based products that we were sometimes using and showing them during the labs. What we also did, and you've already been introduced to the content that is included in that What's Bioeconomy book for kids. We were also showing them a copy. They were able to take this home. So this is very interesting. I found very playful book where kids can discover, as it was explained, how the things they see in their house or at school every day can be produced from renewable bio-based resources. And then we were also making them play a memory game where they had basically to match the final products listed on the cart with the feedstock. So it's really making the memory work a little about the correlation between biomass feedstock and the products that they can eventually produce out of these feedstocks. And then also at least what we've done in Germany is to also make them taste some innovative foods like insect crackers or algae-based soda or some chocolate bars made from peanuts without additive sugar. So really trying again to activate all their senses, the touch with the hands, the smell with the nose, and the taste with the mouth. So this is an important lesson learned from our experiments. And next slide, please. Yeah, so basically in terms of lessons learned and really the main key takeaways we had from these experiments that were for them, but also for us in terms of learning. It was for the first time for Lily and myself to engage with so young kids. But when we really learned that we really need to get out of the box when we try to engage with them and find some innovative approaches. So the more practical it can be and the less theoretical, the better, of course. Addressing more than one sense, so activating all the senses, as I've explained a couple of times, and also making connection to real life scenarios so that they can relate to their everyday life, and then they can remember more easily and talk to some friends about what they've done with actually something that they found on the table when they are around with friends. Just an example. Making them laugh, so surprising them with some striking elements. So this was one of the things we were trying to do, for example, when we, for example, put the image of an elephant and then a paper sheet next to it, and we said, you know that this sheet is actually made out of the poo from that elephant, and it's usually quite work well to engage with them and also to retain their attention, which is sometimes not so easy, as you may know. And then also another key lesson learned is to not focus and not go into the details, but really trying to make them understand the principle of bioeconomy at large. So also what sustainability means and how we can achieve that with very simple terms and very simple experiments. And also trying to make them reproduce this at home, so involving their family members, their parents, their teachers, or their friends' parents, etc. This is a good point of furthering the teaching. Next slide, please. So during the experiment, of course, making them work in teams is if possible, is always more interesting and more appealing for the kids rather than being each in their own corner. So this was not always something very easy with the COVID restrictions, but we were at least, I think, managing in all labs to get them in little groups so that they can also exchange and talk between themselves about what they learn or what they find interesting. We also need to be open to other activities, like if they talk about some everyday life habits or routines that they do, and how we could maybe do these routines more sustainable or more eco-friendly. It's also a good combination of teaching methods. So not only focusing on what we try to achieve with the specific experiment that we run, but also opening it up to what they do in their everyday life. So in this context, reminding that very small actions can make big differences. And then, of course, this is something that is also extremely important for them, depending on where the kids live. We always need to try to relate to their environment. So, for example, if kids are living nearby the seaside, then we would rather focus more on algae-based products or the tons of things that are made out of algae nowadays. If they live in the forest environment, we would maybe focus more on the wood biomass that can be turned into some sustainable energy or some sustainable products. If they live in city, we would rather focus on bio-based building materials or some eco-friendly transport, so the biomass energy for buses and trains, etc. So basically really trying to match what we explain to them with their natural environment. Then asking them to explain what they've learned. It's also a good way to check what their understanding is, how they feel, and how they react to this load of new information. And then, yeah, not promoting inclusiveness and trying to connect with their peers, their friends, their teachers, and all the people around them to try to make this bioeconomy teaching something that happens every day and not only on a planned occasion.